Thank you, Jeff, for leading us through that. I'm feeling optimistic. I hope you are too. Infrastructure is sometimes overlooked in headlines and photo ops, but as panelists noted, there's much opportunity for positive impact here and also a lot of work to be done. For our next session, Janice Lind, founder of and president of Green Hydrogen Coalition, joins us alongside the City of Pasadena Council member Felicia Williams to bring us up to speed on the work the coalition has been doing and what a hydrogen industry can do for California. Please welcome Janice and Council member Williams.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the CALSTART members. The first question is, what is your definition of green hydrogen, and what are the different definitions based on what the market is seeing and what the federal government is seeing?
Thank you, Council Member Williams. First of all, I just want to say it's really an honor to be here today. Thank you, CALSTART. Everyone's heard about the many colors of hydrogen: blue, green, pink, turquoise. And there's really no generally accepted definition of green hydrogen in the world today. From the GHG standpoint, we define it very broadly as any pathway that does not utilize fossil fuels and, importantly, has climate integrity as measured by its life cycle carbon emissions. And that had better be zero or de minimis, or even better if it's negative. We are huge fans of tracking carbon intensity and driving it to zero for all production pathways of hydrogen.
So is that different from the way others define green hydrogen?
You know, there's different groups around the world. You may hear green hydrogen being used synonymously with certain types of pathways such as electrolysis. There's some folks that think about green hydrogen as electrolytically produced from any type of zero carbon electricity. Others may be referring to it only as maybe electrolysis from wind and solar. Others talk about green hydrogen maybe from an organic waste standpoint. So from our view, carbon intensity is the common denominator because there's so many ways, and we like to define it broadly because innovation is here. And while there's many commercially available pathways, there are some that are being invented today that probably we couldn't even imagine were possible 3 years from now.
That's really good to know. And so you're the founder of the Green Hydrogen Coalition. And so what is your vision for how green hydrogen can become economical and then really grow to scale?
One word. Actually, I'll call it 3 words. I was originally going to say hub, but it's more than just hub. It's strategic hub development. And, one of the things that we've realized in our work is that the key to achieving really low delivered cost is scale. So you need large scale production, drive down the cost, just like we've seen with solar panels, wind turbines. But then you also need to deliver the molecule. And the way to deliver that molecule at very low cost, you need transport infrastructure and storage infrastructure. Today, we have a lot of this for hydrogen as an industrial feedstock. Unfortunately, all this infrastructure now supports hydrogen made from fossil fuels. There's a lot of it in use: pipelines, storage facilities, above ground storage. So how do we move forward with green hydrogen? And when I say strategic hub development, I'm talking about strategically aggregating demand in targeted locations, not just from one sector, but from across sectors: transportation, power, industrial sectors, even for shipping and aviation use. Greater visibility into mass demand will give us visibility and the ability to plan and develop the high volume supply chain that we're going to need to produce, move, and store mass scale green hydrogen to serve these demand off-takers with very low delivered cost.
So who do you see, I know that you and I had talked about off-takers before, but who do you see as the main off-takers sort of in the beginning of this scaling process as opposed to the end of the scaling process, and how do we engage them? And then I also want you to talk a little bit more about the hub concept that you're developing.
Yeah. So, the off-taker suite is really going to vary based on the region you're talking about. Many of you probably have heard news announcements of hubs or big projects getting started in Europe, perhaps centered around an ammonia plant, right? Ammonia facilities use a lot of hydrogen. Others maybe around a steel plant. Steel is a very large off-taker. In the GHC, when we founded the GHC, we started with this idea, we need to be commercially oriented, and the way to make this happen, we need to make a great leap forward on the whole ecosystem. And when we looked around, we identified a number of locations, and we identified Los Angeles and Southern California as one of those prime areas to get started. And LA, we now have a name for it. It's called High Deal Los Angeles, has become our first hub. And there's many reasons why we selected LA. And it's got an abundance of potential multi-sectoral off-takers. We've got the biggest port in North America. We have an air pollution issue we need to address. We have tremendous leadership and progress on the transportation side, thanks to many of the people on this webinar. And importantly, we have the right leadership at the local level, at the state level. But unfortunately, in Southern California, we went through the whole list of who could be going first. And remember, what matters first is we need a significant off-taker. And while we have many fueling stations, when we mean significant, we mean millions of tons of green hydrogen demand to be able to have visibility in that infrastructure. So while we do have a great base of fueling stations and lots of promise on the way, we need to go big. Oil refineries, we do have 6 oil refineries, but there's a number of reasons why oil refineries are challenged to switch to green hydrogen right away. We need someone who's big, bankable, and can go quickly. We looked at, well, is there any steel manufacturing? Sadly, no. California is ag state. Is there any agriculture, any ammonia production? No. We import all of that from out of state. The good news is we do have a very committed power sector, an amazing city leadership, and an extremely committed publicly owned utility that is totally committed to 100% renewable energy. So in Los Angeles, we do have that initial bankable off-taker, which is called the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, to get us started at scale. But really in the long run, the transportation applications, all these other applications will dwarf power sector. So that's how we're getting started. Oh, one thing I want to say too, in our findings as we're interviewing and going through and talking to all these potential off-takers, what we found is that there is a lot of diesel users, terminal operators, heavy fleet operators that are ready to convert to a fuel cell platform that will produce no emissions, but their number one barrier is access to mass scale, low cost green hydrogen fuel supply.
Exactly.
That's the trick.
Exactly. And that really resonates with me. So I sit on the board of the Burbank Airport representing Pasadena, as well as the Foothill Transit Board. And Foothill Transit just voted to purchase hydrogen buses. So we're going to be seeing a lot of this. So I have a feeling you and I are going to be having coffee often. So back in the day, Governor Schwarzenegger talked about the green hydrogen highway in his first campaign, right? So that was some time ago. So do you think that California is leading this effort? And do you think that California is positioned to really have a lot of qualities to be able to lead this effort? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so first of all, I'm based in California, and I am so proud. Everywhere I can, I like to say I am so proud to call California my home. You know, California has been such an important leader nationally, globally, renewable energy, energy efficiency, storage. Oh my gosh, we were the first on energy storage, and the use of hydrogen for the transportation sector. There are more fueling stations and fuel cell vehicles in California, I think, than probably anywhere else in the world. And we should be very, very proud of this leadership that's been going on for a long time. Meanwhile, around the world, countries have been advancing on this idea of green hydrogen as a means to accelerate economy-wide multi-sectoral decarbonization. My board co-founder, Thierry Leperc, he actually wrote a book about this, but he says hydrogen is the new oil. Green hydrogen is the new oil, which is very encouraging. And there are countries like Australia, Chile, Saudi Arabia even, that are making the investments today to be a leader internationally on the production and export of this new valuable decarbonized fuel. And that's where our opportunity lies. And we are so well positioned for this, given our historic leadership on clean energy and how to think through the energy transition, our leadership on transportation applications, our abundance of renewable feedstocks, whether it's renewable electricity, offshore wind, onshore wind and solar, our abundant organic waste that we have. We have so many feedstocks, and we have a really big abundance of large local off-takers. Every sector that uses fossil fuels today is a target, and we have this amazing coastal position to be able to export someday green hydrogen to places like Japan and South Korea. And most importantly, I think the opportunity for us and why we're going to be a leader in this space nationally, globally, is our leadership. We have amazing progressive can-do leadership from local all the way to the top.
Yep, I feel it down here. So I'd like to mention CalStart's Energize program that they are managing for the California Energy Commission. And we will soon be able to provide significant funding for fleets looking to transition from fossil fuels to zero emission trucks and buses, including battery electric and hydrogen. So California also has the low carbon fuel standard. We have rebates, but what are you working on right now in terms of policy to really get to that vision that we talked about before with the specified off-takers, with the hub? Where can we focus now on policy and regulation to get this market moving forward?
Thank you. Yes. So our green hydrogen vision, we call it the first commercial hub is called Ideal Los Angeles. But the hub itself actually in its entirety spans 4 states. It extends into central Utah, where there is a very large salt dome where we can store pretty much unlimited quantities of green hydrogen. We always had our strategic oil reserves. Now we can have our strategic renewable energy reserve. So, and we need to work with our neighboring states and regionally. Ultimately, we'll have a national strategy. That's like one of the key goals and, next to do items under the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. But even when we think regionally, there's certain foundational market design tools that haven't been developed yet that we need to focus on. And the first I mentioned earlier is a commonly accepted, standardized carbon intensity framework based on life cycle. And we're really big fans about life cycle because it accounts for all of the emissions, even upstream. And so this is something that we're encouraging the Department of Energy in their implementation of that bill. There was a framework, a carbon intensity framework, but we're really urging them along with a lot of other environmental groups to make sure it's on a life cycle basis. California, other states regionally, ideally, we all follow the same framework. We can have different policies that hang off of it. That's super important. Related to that, we also need to make sure that we create a marketplace and fair compensation for the environmental attributes of green hydrogen. We have done that so successfully through the LCFS program, but that program is limited to transportation fuels. We would love to see that program expanded or other means to compensate for the carbon benefits of green hydrogen outside of the transportation sector. California, we know there's a lot of funding that the federal government's going to channel into clean and green hydrogen. We're gunning to be the green hydrogen hub, perhaps, at least one of the significant green hydrogen hubs that's funded. We think there's an opportunity to collaborate with state government and locally to make sure that we show up super competitively. We have so many programs, but there is an opportunity to fund and help provide match funding for potential DOE funding that'll head this way. And then lastly, these are probably in the federal realm, but having the right tax policy, there's a proposal in the Build Back Better bill that hopefully, if anything is passed, will survive, but a federal production tax credit for green hydrogen, again, based on carbon intensity. And the other area that is needed to be looked at in the federal domain, perhaps in combination with the states, is to make sure that we have clarity on who has jurisdictional authority for the interstate infrastructure that's needed to move this abundant resource around from points of production to areas of high demand. I know that was a mouthful.
Yeah, no, that's great. We now have our marching orders. So thank you so much to CALSTART. Thank you, Janice, for joining us and the Green Hydrogen Coalition. And everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Heavy commercial transportation is one of the biggest emitters of carbon on the planet. We need to be able to move heavy things long distances without polluting the planet. So we decided to do something about it.
What's fascinating is that we have a very diverse group of individuals. We need that diversity because problems that we're trying to solve is incredibly complex. We are decarbonizing the world. And when I think about that vision, that gets me excited.
We need a different way to power our lives. Nikola's got a vision for solving that challenge.
We combine the transportation and the energy piece together. We have an integrated solution for customers. There's only one way to move, and that's forward. The industry needs these solutions. We're working hard and we're working with urgency. So the journey is only at the beginning.